Hi, welcome to this week's With Liberty and Justice for Some. I'm Congressman Mark Pocan, and today we have a really great podcast about something I think that's going to be relevant to a lot of people's lives who are listening. I don't know if you've ever taken a vacation to a national park, but you have to if you haven't. Our national parks are national treasures for people of all ages, incomes, and backgrounds. During COVID, I remember one trip in particular where I vacationed at the Yosemite National Park in California. Not only is that an absolutely beautiful park, but one day as we're going through on a hike, we came across a 3 or 4 foot cub right off the trail. First, there was pure awe. But then also we remembered that probably meant a mama bear was nearby, and it was probably smart to keep walking. But I'll never forget that feeling when you first saw that bear so close in the park to you as you're hiking. And we've traveled to Zion National Park, Bryce Canyon, and others. Each park is unique and special and quintessentially American. But our parks right now are at risk. There's funding cuts, staffing cuts. There's investments that allow our families to enjoy these amazing places that just aren't happening and are not proposed to happen under the current Republican budget. Fortunately, we have organizations and people fighting against those cuts, groups like the Coalition to Protect America's National Parks. This coalition is comprised of over 4,100 members, all current, former, or retired employees and volunteers at the National Park Service. Get this, they've accumulated over 50,000 years of experience caring for America's natural and cultural resources. I mean, that's an amazing number. And their executive director, Emily Thompson, is with me today to talk about their organization, our parks, and the cuts and challenges facing our national treasures. Her long experience with the parks makes her a great expert to talk to today. But first, I'm going to ask Ken Weber, author of Branding Democrats and Branding Democrats that appears on TikTok and across social media, our one question for today. Ken, thanks so much for being with us.
No, it's a pleasure. I know you're going to spring something on me. I'm a little nervous, but I'm ready for you.
Good. The question we ask is, of all the federal laws that are out there, if you had some magical powers, and that's a whole other funny part, but I'm asking it that way to right. You, and you could change any one federal law, what is that one federal law that you would change?
All right. So I don't know if this is actually a federal law, but it's the Citizens United decision, which is related to dark money. I've been an advocate of whether you're Republican or Democrat, dark money is in nobody's best interest.
Right.
If we're a true republic, if we're a true democracy, we should know who is manipulating the strings of our leaders, our politicians. Mm-hmm. And I honestly didn't know that was going to be the question, Mark. And as I was getting here, you did tell me you're going to spring a question on me. I said, I wonder if it's going to be about, and I thought it might be, believe it, because I'm a mentalist. It was something along these lines. And it occurred to me with Elon Musk, we know he gave something like $250 million to Trump in the campaign. And that was transparent, and I don't know why that was transparent. I know when I gave money to, for example, Hillary Clinton, I was told the maximum was, $2,500. And that's all I was able to give because there are limits. But there are ways, and I don't know the ways, but there are people, big money people, who know how to finagle the system, and they can give money, but the recipients, apparently, they know, this industry or that very wealthy donor gave me X amount of tens of thousands, or hundreds of thousands, or even millions of dollars. And it's only fair, I think, that the public knows who's doing what.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be political. It should be, we need transparency in government. And we had transparency for most of my life. Mm-hmm. I'm older than you, Mark. Don't argue with me. Most of my life, we had transparency.
Yeah.
And then that Citizens United decision came along, and boom, it's like an iron curtain went down. Yeah. And we really don't know what's on the other side of that dark curtain. And I think that would be, if I could change one thing, I think that would be it.
No, we can. That's because of the Supreme Court decision. Congress has to. And HR 1, when the Democrats were in charge, had that in it, fixing that. So I think that's a great answer. And by the way, so far with our podcast this year, that's the number one answer people give too is
really?
United. Yeah, it is at the root of everything, right? If you care about healthcare,
right,
stop the special interest, money. And if you care about, any other issue, it almost always comes to money. So great answer. I appreciate it, Ken. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Wait, so did I win?
You won. And again, author of Branding Democrats. You're on TikTok and all kinds of social media, Branding Democrats. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Mark. See you.
Yeah. And now back to our main guest, Emily Thompson. Welcome, Emily.
Well, thank you, Congressman. Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
Well, thank you. And first, let's just start with a little bit about what is the Coalition to Protect America's National Parks? Who are you and what do you do?
Sure. Yep. So we are an organization made up entirely of former, current, and retired national park employees and volunteers. We have over 4,100 members living nationwide, representing over 50,000 years of collective experience, acting as stewards, stewards and managers of America's national parks. So all different jobs and levels in the agency, from former directors and deputy directors to superintendents, folks who worked in administration, maintenance, interpretation, you name it, we've got it. And we like to refer to ourselves as the voices of experience, because these are the folks who are on the ground working through the policy and taking care of these resources and visitors, and truly have a passion for what they do.
Yeah, well, no, it's very evident. And, and right now you're facing some, I would maybe argue, unprecedented challenges with what's being proposed. There's a lot of things that the Trump administration is doing, literally flooding the zone, making it hard to focus on any single issue. But it's important that we make sure that people know national parks are under attack with this administration. I think people have heard about Medicaid or food assistance, education funding, but it's a lot of things, right? And the national parks are on that list. For example, I think it was just last week, the Trump administration proposed a billion with a B, $1 cut to the National Park Service. Can you talk about this and some of the other attacks that our national parks are facing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's wild, right? Because national parks are consistently voted as one of the government's most loved agencies. People of all walks of life enjoy national parks. They are a very bipartisan issue. There is an insane amount of support for national parks. So the fact that we are gutting the federal workforce, including national park rangers, that we are slashing funding for national parks, it just doesn't make sense. And it's scary. It's scary times. The president's proposed budget would just decimate the national park system. I think I read a statistic from our friends at National Parks Conservation Association that said something like it would be like 75% of the national park system would be gone if that budget was enacted. There's just, we are truly under attack, as you mentioned. The guts to the federal workforce, the deferred resignations, the encouraged retirements, the buyouts, the firings. It's unlike anything we've ever seen before. And parks can't maintain this. It's going to hurt regional offices. It's going to hurt national park programs. And it's hurting the national parks themselves that Americans from all over love to visit every year.
In the Trump's first 100 days, the parks were hit with a 13% reduction in full-time staff at a time of the year when parks are more popular and about to be very busy for the spring, summer, fall season. What's that gonna do, a 13% cut?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to even describe the impacts because they are going to be so vast. And, keep in mind, the National Park Service was already underfunded and understaffed. In the past decade or so, park staffing has been reduced by close to 20%. So, we're coming at it from a difficult place to begin with. Park rangers across the country are already doing more with less. And so here we are now, just, a little over 100 days into 2025. And as you said, it's been a huge reduction in the force. So this is going to impact parks and program offices and regional offices across the country, from visitor services. So we're looking at longer lines to get into parks. We're looking at bathrooms that haven't been cleaned. We're looking at reduced operating hours at facilities, canceled programs. This is going to impact visitors. They're going to see it. And then this is also going to impact smaller and medium parks in particular, who rely on regional offices and program offices that provide services, because these parks are small. They don't have the staff to do all of the work that's needed to do at a park. And so when you cut the support system out from under these parks, work isn't going to get done. And in addition to the public facing work, we're losing science, we're losing long-term studies, we're losing research. It's going to devastate all pieces of the park system.
Yeah, in those smaller parks, there's probably more of those across the country in people's districts, and they're going to get fearful when that actually happens. But right now, we just know that these cuts are building, and in getting ready for this season, it's going to be really tough. Yep,
we're just kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop, and as you know, there's a reduction in force, a RIF underway. That's going to further cut park staff, and it's hard for the employees too, right? They're just waiting. Nobody really knows, like, who's going to be there, who's going to lose their jobs. It's a terrible thing to do.
Well, and like every other federal agency, if this is the respect you get from your employer, even people who've been there a long time, who care about the service, who likely would be adding to the 50,000 years of service with your organization. I mean, at some point, that kind of disrespect, it's just hard to continue in a job, and that's going to affect things even more, because I think what they're doing is, as these people leave, they're not necessarily filling these positions either.
Correct. Yeah, we're kind of losing it on both ends of the spectrum too. We're losing institutional knowledge from people who are retiring or leaving because the situation is so terrible, and then we're also losing a generation of potential leaders of the Park Service, as you said, who wants to work for a federal government when you don't know if your job is secure, let alone you're being subjected to all sorts of traumatic experiences and not knowing what comes next.
Yeah. Now, the good news is others are coming out, speaking out about this. I saw recently a coalition of business leaders came out in support of our parks. Clearly, they know that the national park system isn't just about conservation and recreation, which is extremely important, but they know there's also economic benefits to the country and to the communities around it. Can you talk a little bit more about that mutually beneficial relationship between national parks and local businesses?
Yeah, absolutely. Parks are, I think less than, let me see if I can get this right, less than 0.5% of the total federal budget. Less than 0.5% of the total federal budget. However, they provide a huge economic boost nationwide, but also to local communities as well. I think in 2024, it was something like $55 billion of benefit to the nation's economy. Over 415,000 jobs were supported. For every dollar appropriated to the Park Service, it generates at least $15 back to the national economy. So that's on a large scale. Mm-hmm. And then every local community and gateway community is going to benefit from the tourism and the dollars generated from folks visiting national parks. It's a huge economic driver. And if parks are closed, if the park experience is difficult, if visitors are staying away, that's going to hurt economies across the country.
Yeah, I know when we saw Bryce Canyon and Zion National Park, we stayed at a hotel outside the park. Yeah. We went to restaurants outside the park. We bought some supplies to bring inside when we were hiking from the businesses outside the park. And it's all those ripple effects that'll be felt. But also there's some of the businesses are ones that just work with people who have who recreationally like to hike and things. So national employers, some really big employers around the country.
Absolutely. Yeah. Big businesses, little businesses. I mean, we're talking like 330 million people visiting national parks, and visitation has climbed, and it's probably going to keep going up unless things get bad, and then it goes down, and then everybody's going to suffer.
Yeah. I also heard on staffing that we had lost over 100 leadership positions and 2,400 fewer overall staff. Are those numbers kind of what you're tracking? Because I think that's what I saw somewhere. And I also saw the Washington Post found a document talking about how the Department of Interior was talking about letting 1 out of 4 employees go. What would that mean for the future of our parks?
Sure. Yeah, those numbers track. It's hard to get solid numbers because, first of all, the situation is changing all the time. Who knows how many people will be fired within the next few weeks. And there has been information pushed out to parks and to park employees, that the Park Service is supposed to be open and accessible. We're operating as usual. And this is spin. We're not operating as usual. No one should believe that. You can't gut park staff, gut support offices, and then at the same time expect that parks are going to be operating in the same way at the same level. It doesn't make sense. And so particularly, if that number is accurate, if we're talking 1 in 4, that's going to hit the park system across the country. So that's going to be less park rangers who are available to ensure your visit is safe, to enjoy your visit is enjoyable. If you get stuck in an elevator in a national park somewhere in a cave, you want to make sure there's enough staff on hand to get you out of there. Or if you're backcountry hiking, if you're doing any sort of the, dozens of recreational activities that we love to enjoy in our national parks, you want to make sure there's people there to help and support, in addition to just providing the necessary information and, giving that campfire talk that we all remember. Those are public facing, right? But to not have the leadership, to lose park superintendents, to lose regional directors, these are folks who have dedicated their careers largely to the National Park Service. To not have that consistency is going to be difficult on a broad level too.
I'm glad you brought up the safety part because, like you said, if you're in an elevator in a cave, you need someone to be able to get you out quickly, right? If that's happening. Another thing, I shouldn't admit to this, but I was doing a trail, a little more, aggressive of a trail. And I got in my head somehow clockwise wrong. And they said, make sure you take it counterclockwise, not clockwise. So, of course, I took it clockwise, which meant at the end was the big high hill going up. And, but people, that's going to have health effects for people if you can't, help people get out if you need to. Like, there's so many things that if you don't have the staff that are there to make the experience the most pleasurable possible, you are going to have safety concerns. And, it's not just about having money to have a tax cut for Elon Musk and Donald Trump. It's about making sure a national treasure like our parks are safe for everyone to be able to use.
Absolutely. It's just the Park Service is not a huge part of the federal budget. Park rangers on the whole don't make a huge amount of money. Like, the cuts that are happening are not logical. They don't make sense. And you're hitting at something that Americans love and enjoy, and in fact, bring in a lot for local economies and the national economy.
Yeah, not a lot of people are deciding between being a hedge fund manager and a ranger, right? you're a little different income, but it's a passion for so many of those employees. And, and for the people who attend the parks. I fought for years to put the Ice Age Trail in Wisconsin on the map. And just last year, President Biden and his Interior Secretary, Deb Haaland, upgraded it to a unit status within the National Park System, which essentially finally gets it on the map. Can you talk about how protecting our environment and declaring the protected sites like this as units of the National Park System, how that helps tourism and boosts the local economies?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've also seen a lot of different, so there's, over 400 units of the national park system, and they're all national parks, right? Mm-hmm. Even if they don't have the official name or designation, they're all part of the system. They're all national parks. But we've seen a lot of different congressional offices pushing even for the national park name, because that brings in additional tourism dollars. And from even an international perspective, you can market national parks to a very broad audience and it catches attention and people want to come. So having a national park, whether that is a national park, a national seashore, a national historic trail, any of the above, that's good for business. It's good for tourism. It's good for marketing. It brings in people.
Yeah, and it lets people in Wisconsin also benefit from those economic impacts that happen beyond just the enjoyment of the actual item itself, the park, the trail, whatever that site is. Pivoting to environmental concerns, I know the president has he has ignored climate change science and thinks that oil and gas and coal are our future. I won't ask you to comment on that, but he's even suggesting opening the parks to energy exploration. Can you talk about what that would mean for the American people, for the environment, and why it's important to protect our public lands and maybe not open them up for energy exploration?
Yep, absolutely. So that's something we're tracking closely, obviously, with parks and public lands. Federal lands are largely connected landscapes. So we're connecting, a lot of times Bureau of Land Management land will sit next to national parks. And so energy development, even on lands next to national parks, would be devastating to resources. It threatens things like dark skies, clean air, clean water, the visitor experience, view sheds. We go to national parks to escape or to have adventure or to find peace. And that means these places should be protected. So we're ensuring that those experiences are with us still. And so if I think like the Smoky Mountains National Park is a great example. Like, it's a wonderful park, beautiful resources. And right outside the national park are some bustling gateway towns that are fun in their own right, but very different. You've got Gatlinburg and you've got Pigeon Forge, and those are great spots, but it is a dramatic switch from this like crazy tourist scene to like a beautiful hiking trail that's maybe just 10 minutes inside the park. We did this over spring break with my kids, and it was a great place to talk about. This is why we have national parks, because we want to ensure that these places are protected from development. And so energy development can kind of look at the same way. If we aren't protecting our parks and our public lands from development, what are we doing? Where are we going to go? And I think the idea that we might sell off public lands, that we're going to loosen environmental studies before we lease lands, that hits at the heart of the mission of the National Park Service, to ensure these places are around for future generations.
The Trump administration also wants to change the definition of harm regarding the Endangered Species Act. Can you talk about that and let our listeners know what that means and how it could impact the parks?
Sure, yeah. Parks play a huge role in protecting endangered species, ensuring habitat, ensuring migration corridors are protected. If we're going to change what it means to cause harm to a species, so if we're saying, even if it's unintentional, it doesn't count anymore, we're not responsible for harming the species, that's still harm. It doesn't matter if it's accidental or not. And reducing the protections that have been hard won and long in place would be devastating. It's part of a larger effort to roll back regulations in general. I think just maybe in the last day or two, there's a story about stopping air quality monitoring at national parks across the country. This is clean air. This is like ensuring that, not just like visitors are able to enjoy long views and clear views that are free of smog and other pollution. Like, this is ensuring that the health of local communities is there, because we're able to see what local industry is doing and how that's hurting. So we're talking about the health of people and the health of resources as well.
Are there other attacks that you guys are monitoring or watching right now?
Oh, sure. Where to begin? We're closely tracking things like rollbacks of national monuments, of boundaries and protections there, sell-off of public lands, whether that be for some sort of housing idea or other other environmental regulations like NEPA, park giveaways. The list goes on.
Yeah. So what you're saying is we don't need a Trump hotel on every single.
No. I feel like that might harm our enjoyment of the parks.
I think he's saving that for Russia anyway. Don't worry. So let's end on a more positive note. Since you are working with this organization, doing such great work protecting our parks, what are some of your favorite national parks? What would you like to share with people so that they can enjoy our national treasures from your experience?
That is an excellent question. So I actually started my career as a park ranger. I worked for the National Park Service for about 6 years. And before I moved over to the nonprofit side, as with most of us in the coalition, we still have friends and family who work in the National Park Service. Mm-hmm. Our organization is made up of a lot of retirees who are so passionate about national parks that even in their retirement, they're giving their time. So like asking people to choose a national park is sometimes like choosing your favorite child, right? Like I'm sure you've heard this before. But gosh, one of my favorite experiences happened just a couple of years ago. I was able to go to Acadia National Park in Maine, and the the mix of like water and mountain and forest, and it's a beautiful place. It's a beautiful park. You really feel like you're getting away, even though there's a lot of different ways to access the park, and we had a wonderful experience there. But I live in Ohio, so near and dear to my heart is Cuyahoga Valley National Park. Beautiful place, just not too far from me, which has lots of hiking and easily accessible. I think one of the beauties of national parks, as you mentioned earlier, is that they're all over. There's over 400 units, and so communities across the country are able to access them, and they feel local, right? Like even though they're national. I did do a little looking into Ice Age Trail. I've never been before.
Okay.
I hear it's lovely, but I was really amazed that I think it touches something like 16 counties and over like 130 communities, and it seems like there's such a pride of ownership with the communities along the trail. And it's just, that story can be played out at park units across the country.
Well, and Republican Glenn Grothman worked with me on that. So, I mean, it's something that, generally these issues have been nonpartisan. I don't even have to say bipartisan because they've been nonpartisan, which is the way they should be, right? Our national
Absolutely.
park for everybody. And there's not like a blue cap or a red cap to the Rangers, right? It's just what it is. And unfortunately, that's changed. But, I have to admit one that I forgot to mention on my first list that I've been to many times. In fact, I have more probably printed gear from is the Volcano National Park on the Big Island. And that is some beautiful hiking. And it's, every time you're there, there's some new lava flow somewhere, and talk about, interesting for people visiting.
That's a great place. I was able to spend a little bit of time there as well a few years ago. I did a stint for a while as a park ranger at the USS Arizona Memorial in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii.
Oh, wow.
I was able to travel to a couple national parks there in that wonderful state. And Hawaii Volcanoes is memorable for sure.
Yeah. And in the Yosemite, like I said, I think we spent a week there, and I could have spent a month there easily trying to experience everything. But, it was during COVID, so they were regulating a little bit how many people could come in. But what an experience that was. And in Utah, man, Utah is a lucky state to have all that it has for parks. And, we had not enough time at Zion. Bryce, oh my God, how unique the rock structures are. I mean, there's just a lot of places that people can visit.
There's so many. Do you have a passport book? You should have a passport book.
I should, and I don't. I mean, part of my problem is this job does not exactly give you a lot of vacation time to do things. But fortunately, over the years, we've had a chance to go to some of these parks, and I still have so many more on my list. I'd like to get to, but since you have the inside information, we thought maybe you could enlighten folks at a few places like you did in Maine. That's a park for people.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh my gosh. there's, obviously too many to mention, but I really love some of the smaller and medium parks too, right? Like the historical sites and the cultural sites that I think sometimes often are overlooked are really, they're gems. It's worth exploring.
All right, share a gem or two.
All right. Well, near and dear me, I'm in Ohio, is Charles Young Buffalo Soldier. It's a really wonderful little site that I encourage everybody to check out. Charles Young is a fascinating historical figure, and I think that one doesn't get a lot of press, but it's a good one to go visit. I'm trying to think of some of the newer ones that have come in too. I don't know. Let me get back. I'll get back to you on that.
All right. We appreciate it. The good news is people can. Do you know the website offhand for the park system?
NPS.gov.
Okay. So that NPS, National Park Service, NPS.gov, get more information about our parks. And how about yourself, Emily? If people want to follow you and your organization, what's the information people can follow?
Yeah, absolutely. So the coalition is at Protect NPS, is in nationalparkservice.org. We've got a website, we're on all of the social media channels, Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram. You can find us everywhere. Try to keep everybody updated with what's happening, all the different actions and communications we're taking to try to, protect parks, protect public lands, ensure that these places are around for our kids, for our grandkids, and it's the best of us for sure.
And reminding people the fight is now to reach out to your members of the House and the Senate, because within weeks, this literally could be decided, some of these cuts. And even though I serve on appropriations, we're really not sure what that process is going to look like this year. So even though the president just released a skinny budget, those cuts are harsh, and we're going to have a lot of work to do to preserve things. So, Emily, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And thank you for your support and your passion for parks and public lands. It's appreciated.